Going here, and I will give the abrupt pause there in music, so I will have to learn one of these days to fade it on out. But thank you everyone for being here, and welcome to Global Entrepreneurship Week 2021, powered by Western Health Advantage. We're excited to kick it off today with this workshop on strategic growth opportunities in international business, and we're excited to partner with the World Trade Center of Northern California on this workshop, and it will be led by President and CEO of the World Trade Center in Northern California, Kevin Mather. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Cameron Law, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Carlson Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. I'm also the Sacramento organizer here for Global Entrepreneurship Week, and I'm a proud board member of the World Trade Center of Northern California. I'm joined by one of our team members, Arlene Miranda, who provides administrative and marketing support for the Carlson Center. For those of you that are learning about the Carlson Center for the first time, we serve as a regional hub and platform for providing approachable and accessible entrepreneurial education, support, and community to enable startup founders of all backgrounds to explore and launch your businesses. And we have this clear vision to make the greater Sacramento region a premier hub for innovation and entrepreneurship. And so what's this Global Entrepreneurship Week? Well, we're actually joining over 180 countries in a week-long celebration of innovation and entrepreneurship. And this is the first of many workshops throughout the week. And it's really to bring people together to celebrate the role entrepreneurship plays and to provide you the education and connections you need to be successful founders and startups and growing your businesses. And so without further ado, I will pass it on over to Kevin Mather, who's the president and CEO of the World Trade Center and has deep experience in importing and exporting, as well as working with technology companies. So I will stop my share and go from there.
Great, Cameron. Thank you very much, and welcome to everybody. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you and to share a little bit about how international business can be part of really a strategy, a strategic strategy to grow your business. And a little bit of background on me. I'm an engineer by education that figured out I really loved international business, and I worked in the laboratory educational technology space for about 24 years, and most of that was in international business. And that was really the path that led me to the World Trade Center. So what we do is we help small businesses that want to do international business. We provide them really education, resources, and connections to be successful. So today we're going to talk a little bit about how international business can be part of a strategic strategy for growth. And the key thing to take away is there's resources out there and people out there that if this is something that you're interested, that can help you be successful and can teach you the skills that you need. International business is just another skill set. It's like learning Excel, it's learning to ride a bicycle, it's learning something new. And there's just a series of steps that you have to learn. And we'll talk about a couple of specific opportunities that we'll be presenting over the next couple of months that may be of interest. And so with that, I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started. And so, as I said, it's really strategic growth opportunities in international business is what we're going to talk about today. And so, well, a bit of an agenda. What I'm going to say is, why international business? We'll talk about a little bit of myths, a little bit about importing, a little bit of exporting. We're going to talk about cross-border e-commerce, which is a massive growth area. This has absolutely exploded, and the pandemic really accelerated, the e-commerce world. And then we'll talk about some resources and next steps. And so, why go international? I think that's really the big thing. And it's a couple of reasons in my mind. One is the opportunity. There are massive numbers of opportunities that are out there because there's a huge amount of purchasing power and a huge amount of the world out there that are hungry to do business with American companies. They want the quality, the innovation of American products in dealing with American companies. It can be, a tremendous thing. There's a couple of other things that we really are going to talk about, and it's diversified market risk, or I actually use the word durability. International business is a great way to take and help your company to be more what I would call durable. And I'll explain a little bit more about what I mean by that. A big piece of that is you diversify revenue on the export side, by having multiple markets, and that those are, if one market's down, another market can sustain you. And I've talked to a lot of exporters that have absolutely experienced that during COVID, where certain markets were down and certain markets were up, and it sustained their companies. And as I go, we'll definitely have time for Q&A at the end, but feel free to also put questions into the chat, and Cameron, if you can help me, and we'll take some as we go and some at the end. This whole thing of resiliency, and I talked about that a little bit. International companies, you look at the data from the Brookings Institute, major banks, international companies are companies with diversified revenue stream from exporting especially fare better in downturns. And it is, it's why I said so, it's the fact that there are certain markets that are up, certain markets that are down, and yet, so they're more diversified. Talking with one banker, they said that during both the housing crisis and during COVID, that the most distressed companies within their loan portfolios were domestic only businesses, and the international businesses came through both the housing crisis 2008, 10, and through COVID better than the domestic only folks did. And then international business is fun. It's an amazing learning curve. The travel, culture, language, food, relationships, it's really a fascinating thing. Now, let's just take a look at a few myths and, the realities. A lot of companies think that I'm too small. We're a 7-person firm or a 9-person firm. Roughly 42% of exporters in the United States have less than 19 employees. There's a number of them in the greater Sacramento area that I can think of that are somewhere between that 12 and 50, 60 person companies, and they're doing a significant percentage of their business in international trade. So even if you're a small company, you're not too small to start thinking about going global and to consider that. The other thing is some people will say, well, but I provide a service, and you can't export services. You can only export goods, stuff. And that's not true. Actually, huge amounts of demand are out there for management, consulting, architecture. You can see a lot of them. Education, actually, believe it or not, foreign students coming to the United States are considered an export, part of the export economy, and are actually a huge employer in the Sacramento region. In 2020, total US exports were about a little over $2 trillion. And you can see that services were about a third of that. And so service exports are actually a huge percentage of what the United States does, and we're actually very strong in exporting those services. Now, some people will say, but you can't import services. Well, that's not the truth either. Many services are available from overseas, including IT, software development, web development, engineering, and design services. Now, if you're a small startup company and you need, let's say that you need to take and have contract capacity to expand your ability in many of these areas, you might consider some of those overseas providers. It can be a very strategic decision based on cost competitiveness, time to market, a whole variety of factors. So just think about that. Now, let's just talk a little bit about importing, and then we'll go to exporting. So an import is any item sent to the United States from another country. And it's, it could be a service, software, technology, data. A lot of people think about importing as components or finished goods for their supply chain. So let's say you're a manufacturer and you're importing components for your assembly process. That's absolutely a part of it. It can also be that there are people that have clothing stores, home goods, and things like that. They take and import finished goods for distribution. Now, one of the things that we'll talk about is what's called the de minimis value. This is the last bullet point there. And there's a lot of e-commerce that's going on that takes and allows us to bring goods into the United States that are below $800 US and not pay duties or taxes on them. And that's this US de minimis value. And that's been one of the things that's absolutely driving cross-border e-commerce. And there's a lot of businesses that are buying things, computer products, quite frankly, and are bringing in computer products, office supplies under this $800 value, and they're importing them or buying them directly from suppliers overseas because it's more cost competitive. Now, I know that importing can be a political topic, and I'm going to encourage us to not think about it in those terms, and think about it in terms instead of a part of your strategic business. Why might you want to take an import? And really, it comes down to competitiveness and opportunity. In some cases, you can get better pricing, faster delivery. You can see these. Sometimes it's a unique product or unique product features that can help you to stand out and differentiate your company and yourself in the marketplace. And in some cases, the customer may be demanding that product. And so there are a large number of reasons why you might want to import. Now, importing is very similar to domestic suppliers. It's really, you need to buy materials or components or finished goods from your business. You have suppliers to choose from. You compare cost, availability. You do all of those things on the importing side, but there's some differences, and this is where those different skills would come in. In many cases, people will want you to pay them in US dollars. In some cases, they want you to pay them in local currency. And so that's where you may have to get involved in payment in foreign currency, which is not a difficult thing. There is more paperwork and different paperwork associated with bringing products into the country. And it involves more steps for shipments. It may be subject to customs duties and taxes, depending, and you really will need to have most likely a customs broker. If it's going to be above that de minimis level and you're going to be bringing it in on a regular basis, you're going to want to have a customs broker that can help you do this and to be successful doing this. And so it's basically, think of importing as shopping on a global scale, and you find a supplier, you find the product, you find the price point, the delivery terms that you want, and you're going to bring it in for your business, but you're going to do it from outside the country versus a domestic supplier. Now, kind of some cautions on importing. You just need to, I call these self-inflicted risks. Make sure you know what you're buying and importing into the country. There are ways that you can verify product quality. There are inspection services that can take and check the value. If you're bringing in one small package or a sample, that's one thing. But if you're going to bring in a container load, that becomes a different concern. And there are inspection services, SGS and others, that can take and verify the product for you before it's shipped from your foreign supplier. There are many cases. I know somebody that was in the bicycle manufacturing business that brought in carbon fiber bike frames out of China. He would physically fly there and inspect all of the bike frames that were contract manufactured for them before loading and before shipment. And so it kind of depends on the value and the quantity that you're bringing in. One that is fairly common is you need to make sure of US regulatory requirements. During COVID, everybody wanted to start importing PPE, especially masks. And there are regulations around this. And so there were a lot of people that had to go through a learning curve of understanding the regulatory environment for importing. And it can be food and drug. If it's an electrical product, it might need to be UL certified. If it's a food product, you've got things with the US Department of Agriculture, perhaps. If it is, a chemical or other things, there also might be regulations from the EPA. So make sure that you do your research and you know exactly any regulatory or licensing issues that you have to do before you start. And The other big one is that you have to understand what are called landed costs. And landed costs are the total cost of buying that product. Just as here in the United States, we buy something and there's sales tax on it. With an import, not only is there the purchase price, but there's going to be your shipping costs, potentially duties and taxes, brokerage fees, and internal shipping. And so all of that influences your landed costs. So if you're going to import, you really need to be able to understand that landed cost structure. And then also there are financial risks. I know of one person that was trying to import masks during the start of COVID. They transferred close to $250,000 in cash to a supposed supplier that then completely disappeared on them. And so there are those risks out there, but there's ways to mitigate those risks. I know another buyer that was importing PPE masks and gloves, and they used what is called an escrow account, and to where money was put into escrow, proof of shipment of quality goods was put into escrow as well, and then there was a transfer there. So there's ways to take and mitigate those risks. Now, if importing is something that you think you want to do, the most important thing is, what is the product? You need to be very clear on what it is you want to do and to bring into the country and why you want to do it. And then really make sure you know those landed costs. There are databases that can help you find good suppliers on a global basis. And then the big thing is find a customs broker and make them your strategic partner. They can really help you make life much, much easier when you're doing that. Now, let's talk about exporting, because that's an area that there is a lot of interest in. And once again, it's really any items, commodities, software, technology. It can also be data that you're taking and selling to a foreign buyer. Now, why export? And I think there are tons of competitive advantages here. The first one is it's that resiliency, it's that durability, it's that differentiated revenue stream by having more markets that can take and smooth out your revenue cycle. In some cases, I can tell you one industry that I was in had a very definite purchasing cycle. And so the international business tended to be a different cycle. The international business was strongest in the October, November, December timeframe when the domestic business was slow. And so those two differentiated revenue streams helped it take and smooth out the revenue cycle for that company. And it also can take, and you can see the other reasons there. Increased gross revenue is obviously one, and it can enhance the brand value. The other thing I would put on there is that competing on a global scale, competing against other countries in other markets, I think forces many companies to get better at what they do. It forces them to sharpen their go-to-market strategy, their brand strategy. It can force them to become ISO certified, to get CE certification. And all of those things can drive up the competitive skill set of that company and enhance them actually in the domestic market as well. And there's also this go-to-market strategy. If you say, well, no, we sell on a global basis and your competitor sells only domestically, you can position your company differently by saying, no, we're a global player at what we do. And our competitors they're a domestic player. So it can be a competitive advantage that way. So similar to the importing, domestic selling and exporting, you have a product or service, you have customers, you develop a plan. A lot of it is very much the same. The big differences are that different payment methods come into play. Okay, wire transfers, escrow accounts, what are called documentary collections can be involved there. There's different paperwork. you have to take and you have to file paperwork when you are exporting from the United States. It is more expensive to export because there's going to be added costs for packaging, shipment, international insurance, so it is a more expensive piece of business. And then there's different laws and languages and things like that. The other thing is that it's the reverse of when I said, if you're going to import something, make sure you know about US regulations on that product. If you're exporting, you need to make sure that you know of any potential regulations on your product in your target market. If you're going to go into Europe, you have to make sure, do I need to be CE marked? Okay. If you're going to sell electronic products, you may need to look at Bluetooth. If your product has Bluetooth, you could be required to do testing around Bluetooth and radio frequency. You may need to have certifications if your product plugs into the wall. And so there's these other regulations that you need to take into account as well. But it's all learnable. Like I say, this is all just things that can be learned, and there's great resources out there.
Kevin, we had a question come in if you're open to taking that.
Yeah, you bet.
Cool. So the question was, first off, a wonderful presentation. Would like to ask, do these points apply to drop shipping e-commerce platforms as well? And is that something maybe that you've seen?
There can still be absolutely regulatory aspects on products if you're going to go cross-border e-commerce. Some of the really good e-commerce platforms, and we'll talk about this more in a bit, they can take care of a lot of the payments and the documentation, depending on the service level that you contract. They can absolutely help you out. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And if I don't answer the correct question there, then come back to me on it. Here's one conversation I've had with a number of people, and they'll say, I do so much business domestically. I just don't need to divert, I don't need to export. I don't need to think about that. Think about COVID or think about the domestic housing crisis. Those things disrupted our markets so radically that I would say we need to be conscious of always thinking, assuming that our markets and our business is always going to be good, can get us in trouble. And so I think if we're proactive and we say, hey, I'm going to take and figure out, how do I diversify revenue? How do I minimize risk? And does international business make sense as part of that overall strategy? I think that's one of the reasons that we really want to consider this. Let me give you a case study. I actually used to work at this company, Pasco Scientific, 160-person manufacturer. And during the housing crisis, the domestic business for that company was in really bad shape. And it was not because of a poor product or lack of talented staff or anything else. It was because the US economy was in such bad shape that the funding for US schools was significantly reduced. But on the international business side, we signed a series of contracts with the Ministry of Education in Kazakhstan and also in Russia. And we signed the largest contracts in that company's history. And rather than laying staff off, we were taking and working double shifts in the factory to get those projects out the back door and shipped on time. And one of my board members at the time was economic development for Placer County. And his comment was that those dollars don't stop at the doors of the company, nor at the border of the city of Roseville or Placer County. Those dollars that are coming in are going to be moving around the region, and that it's that sort of business that helps to take and stabilize regions, and that's why regions with strong tradable goods sectors tend to perform better in economic cycles. So that was a huge eye-opening lesson. There's another company out there in the Roseville area that during the housing crisis, they grew at double digits. The US market shut down completely, and yet they experienced double-digit growth because of their international business. A lot of people say, "Ooh, isn't exporting risky?" Reality is there's ways to mitigate risk. And many markets, Canada, the EU, Mexico, sorry about the dog in the background. Um, it's no riskier there than doing business in the United States. And the most important thing is learning to mitigate your risk. There's a lot of resources out there. World Trade Centers like ourselves, small business development centers, Department of Commerce, Exim Bank, that can help you to take and understand the risks of international business and to mitigate those risks. Well, here's another one. It's really, really too complicated. And as I said at the very beginning, exporting really is a step-by-step process that most businesses can master. It's just a series of building blocks that you need to learn, just like anything else. And as entrepreneurs, there's a whole learning curve on a constant basis. This can be just another piece of that learning curve and specific skills. And once again, the host of resources that are available out there is pretty tremendous. And there's a lot of those in the greater Sacramento area. Payment is another one of the areas that people are very worried about. And trade and banking services and payment services have really evolved to where making international trade or international payments is actually quite simple. In 20 plus years of doing international business, I only had a couple of pieces of business where we had any difficulty on getting payment. And it's, you put a process in place, and you have to vet your potential customer or client, just as you do domestically. And then you take advantage of the resources and the tools that are out there to help mitigate that risk and to make those payments. This is another one. My company or my product can't compete and sell overseas. As I said before, in many cases, overseas buyers want to do business with a US or European company. They want that perception of quality. They want that cutting edge product. They want to do business with US companies. We focus very heavily now. We're all based in California. If you're going to consider doing international business, I would also brand myself very heavily as a California company, because California is definitely seen as a center of innovation. And so branding yourself as a US company and a California company can be a lovely differentiator and competitive advantage. And if you can do business in the United States, especially in multiple markets in the United States, that's a very good sign that your product can also compete on an international basis. So, what are the areas we need to mitigate in terms of risk? Let me close that out. Big one is the financial one, and this is one that we get frequently asked about. And there are ways to take and do this. There are payment devices out there that are called documentary collections, letters of credit, escrow account, wire transfers, and there are ways to utilize those tools to mitigate your risk. And there's a thing also in international trade called the Incoterms, which is all about the transfer of ownership and risk, or the transfer of risk and who pays what when. So one of the things you need to do is, this is just one of those areas that you need to learn, because it tells you, where am I responsible for this for, and what do I have to pay? And so knowing, based on the terms of sale, what you're responsible for helps you to mitigate that financial risk. Always, trust your gut. If a deal looks too good to be true, probably is. Same thing that goes domestically absolutely goes internationally. Definitely watch out for firms that copy technology from samples. We had a number of products that got copied in the international marketplace. It's, it happens. Very carefully vet your potential partners. The U.S. Department of Commerce is a great resource for doing that. World Trade Centers as well. And then networking with other people that are in your industry. And then the last thing is in many cases, you do want to sign distribution agreements. Do your due diligence. This is, go on a few dates with somebody before you decide to get married to them, is the way I would put it. Take your time to really research the company and to know who they are before you appoint them as a distributor. When new distributors would come up to me and want to represent our product and insist on exclusivity immediately, that was just a complete deal breaker for us. We would refuse to do exclusivity until somebody had really proven that they could deliver and be a trusted partner. Self-inflicted risks. Don't pursue too many markets at once. So there are ways to take, and knowing what your product is, you can find out what's called a harmonized code or a Schedule B. And knowing that code, so in international trade, every product is given a commodity number, like this wireless mouse has a commodity number. Once you know your commodity number, you can take in there are databases and you can reverse search to find company or countries that are importing your product. And then if you come up with a list of 5 companies that import something your company can provide them, you can then say, based on political risk, currency stability, language, time zone, geographic proximity, which of those markets is my first priority, which is my second, which is my third. So prioritize 1, 2 markets, expand, then go back for another bite of the apple. In terms of business partners, I always would say start non-exclusive, get references, demand performance metrics. If somebody's not performing for you as an international business partner, you have to make the tough decision and replace them, right? Don't try to handle all the shipping, transportation, documentation, everything. Freight forwarders are really a key strategic partner for doing international business. And there are a lot of really good ones out there. And we're happy to make references to these folks. And then do seek export assistance, especially as you're getting started. Like ourselves, World Trade Center, U.S. Department of Commerce, the Ex-Im Bank, Small Business Administration, all have a lot of good educational content and programs to help you build skills and to mitigate risk as you going forward. So how do I get started? So get training on how to export. There are lots of resources available online, and there are export accelerators available. World Trade San Diego has an excellent program. We actually are launching one called World Trade Connect in early January. U.S. Department of Commerce can help. In December, we'll actually have a 2-part session on December 7th and 9th, Exporting 101, which will be 2 2-hour sessions, a deeper dive into the fundamentals of exporting. So definitely go out and look for courses like that. Develop a clear strategy and be patient. Find a really good freight forwarder. They are a key strategic partner on this. So Cameron, how am I doing on time? I don't see my clock.
You are at 10:35, so we have about 25 minutes left.
Perfect. Okay, so now we'll go back to that cross-border e-commerce. So what is cross-border e-commerce? How many people, and I can't see everybody's face, but have you bought something on Amazon or eBay or some other website, and when it gets shipped to you, it comes from the UK or Canada or Russia or wherever? That's cross-border e-commerce. The pandemic accelerated the growth of cross-border e-commerce dramatically. I'll give you an example of it. My oldest son, Isaac, had a 2008 Subaru Forester, and he wanted a specific hood scoop and a specific set of skirts to take and dress up his 2008 Forester. He found them online, and when they got delivered, they had been shipped from Russia. And he was able to get a better price and the exact product he wanted by buying and going cross-border and having it shipped from Russia. And this is becoming more and more common. This has really been driven by a number of things. Digital access and mobile devices. Vast majority of the world accesses the internet by their phone. Mobile devices are absolutely what drives a lot of this. It is dominated globally by marketplaces. Amazon's a huge one. Alibaba, I think everybody's familiar with. In Latin America, there's Mercado Libre, and there are a lot of these depending on the region that you want to do business with. They take and they can integrate marketing, ordering, payment, and fulfillment. And that's really their business value proposition to you as the seller. So let's say that you want to do e-commerce and you want to expand your market reach into Canada or into Mexico. You can take and work with marketplaces like Amazon that allow you to sell into those markets as well. They take care of a lot of the back end issues, including currency exchange for you, because you may be selling to a customer that's buying in Mexican pesos and they may be paying online in Mexican pesos, but the money that you receive will be in US dollars. And so the platforms are taking care of a lot of that for you in the back end. Historically, e-commerce like this, cross-border, was driven by price and by selection arbitrage. In other words, it was cheaper to buy it from the United States or from another country and to pay international shipping than it was to buy it locally. Or I can find a product overseas and have it shipped to me that I can't simply get in my own, domestic market. And so those have been kind of a couple of the main drivers historically. These what are called de minimis levels, and I should have defined this earlier. So a de minimis level is the level at which a country's taxation authorities simply say it's not worth it for us to take and do the paperwork and to charge duties and taxes on this product coming into the country. And as those de minimis levels increase, it makes cross-border e-commerce more and more attractive because consumers can buy a product, exactly the product they want, and they get it at a more competitive price. And most people think of e-commerce as a B2C. I'm a business and I'm going to sell something directly to the consumers. In many cases, it's also B2B. The example I said earlier was there are a lot of companies that are buying computer hardware or office supplies, office technology, and they'll bring that into the country via e-commerce because of that US de minimis levels. Estimates are that this year, cross-border e-commerce will be $1 trillion marketplace. That's just a stunning number. So, what's the difference between e-commerce? Maybe your company is already online, you've got an e-commerce devices, lots of things that are very similar. The big difference is you're going to ship cross borders. You and the seller or the buyer are likely, in many cases, using different currencies, different paperwork, higher transaction costs. So it's a lot of those same things that we had before. The platforms, like I say, though, especially many of the online platforms can help facilitate and take some of that load off of you. One of the questions that we've been asked, and I've seen in presentations, what are some of the top product categories for cross-border e-commerce? And you can see there, cosmetics, health, beauty, baby, dried fruits and nuts, small consumer electronics, computers, office supplies, office electronics are all some of the sectors that our product categories, top product categories for cross-border. Now, how do I get started in cross-border? Well, there are cross-border e-commerce accelerator programs. In Southern California, the California International Trade Center and an organization called Get2Global, and the program supported by various small business development centers and the California Community College System. It looks as though we will be offering something very similar in Northern California in partnership with CITC. So definitely look for one of these programs that are out there that can take and help you to understand the basics of cross-border e-commerce. And then find other people, like World Trade Centers or other organizations that can help you learn that. When we talk to companies that are thinking about, especially, well, both importing and exporting, there's this whole question of, are they international ready? Are they export ready? And I always talk about 4 things to think about in your business. And that is, I call it the 4 Ps: the product, process, profit, and people. So do you have a viable product or service that you can sell internationally? Are you already in market with a viable product or service? Right? Has the market already shown that there's a demand for what you do? Processes. Do you have production processes, order fulfillment, customer service, finance, shipping? Has your business already got those processes in place to support international expansion as a part of your overall growth strategy? The profit piece is, how does your balance sheet look? Are you profitable? Because international business does require an investment. You can do this incrementally, but you need to be financially able to invest. And there are, if you're an ongoing concern, you're a business, you've got a track record, then there are programs from the Small Business Administration and the Export-Import Bank that can help you to get working capital for international expansion. And in people, and it's not, when I say people, it's not just someone to do the work, although that's very important. It's really a senior management or ownership commitment to international business as a part of the overall company strategy. I have been part of an international business team where the senior management of the company was like, okay, yeah, you guys are that international group. You guys go on, we're going to get back to the real business over here. That's a tough go. You really want to be committed to international business as a part of the overall growth of the company. So next steps and resources. Well, as I said, on November 7th and 9th, we'll be doing a free Export 101. And that's going to be a 4-hour course. And we will go into greater depth on a lot of these fundamental areas. And we'll do a deeper dive into, how do I do market research? What is the documentation required? I mentioned this thing called Incoterms, which is about transfer of risk and who pays for what. We'll talk about those. And so that's really a chance for you to get a little deeper dive and to go, oh, okay, and to really investigate, is this part of what you want to do as part of your international, or as part of your business strategy? In early 2022, we will be launching and recruiting for our first cohort for World Trade Connect, which is really an export accelerator program, a combination of both online content and then group work together. And the outcome of that is to come away with an international expansion plan and introduction to all the resources that can help your company successfully enter the international market. And then if you're interested in that cross-border, definitely follow up with us, because CITC in Southern California and ourselves in Northern California should be having sessions for cross-border e-commerce, very specifically on the cross-border side. And then what we'll do is we'll provide to Cameron a list of international business resources. As I say, Exim Bank, Department of Commerce, Small Business Administration, there's a host of them that are out there. And with that, I will open it to questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kevin, for taking us through the workshop. We have about, I would say 10 minutes for questions, and then we'll wrap up with some next steps. So I know there was one question that was sent to me. Jujubee, would you like to ask your question?
Oh yeah, my question was really around the insurance. Not sure if you know, Kevin, if there's insurance providers that cover specifically for international import-export businesses.
I'm sorry, I had a hard time. My speaker.
Oh, I can repeat that question. Basically, yeah, my question was whether there exists any sort of insurance providers that will who cover for import-export businesses.
Boy, I think my internet connection must be having some. You were asking about insurance policies to cover international import-export?
Yep, and providers that may come to mind.
Boy, the names of companies. So yes, as part of the contract for carriage, especially if you're importing or as you're exporting, you definitely want to consider, and I would encourage you to buy the insurance as a part of that. So yes, there's absolutely insurance policies that can be bought as a part of that. I am drawing a blank right now on names of specific carriers for that. A lot of the time you can arrange for that through a freight forwarder. If you're going to UPS, DHL, FedEx, you can insure through them as well. And then if you use one of the big freight forwarders, AIT, Crane Worldwide, Expeditors, they also can take and provide that as a part of their offering. You can also take, and if you're doing a lot of import export, you can take and get your own policy that covers, your annual value. I can get some names. If you'll make sure to give Cameron your email, I'll see if I can't give you some references.
Perfect. Yep. We just connected on LinkedIn, so we'll be able to share that information. So awesome. All righty. Trong, I think you raised your hand, and then Mohammed has the next question in the chat.
Yeah. Well, hi, Kevin. I have a couple of questions about the HS code, how reliable it is on the database on the HS code for tariff, the current tariff policy. If I enter my HS code on the website and I see no response and no current tariff, then is that correct? Because the tariffs issue is really a problem for people like us bring things from overseas. The second question is about the de minimis amount of $800. I heard rumor that may change or may go away. You have any insight into that? Because I got hit, because I know the $800, so I try to only bring in anything that less than $800, but I just got whacked because one of the guy reporting, he rounding number up the part price, and they go up to $817, and I whack with not only the tax but also the storage, so that was pretty painful. So those are my questions. Yeah.
Sure. On the HS code, so it sounds like you're importing. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm importing now, but I also exporting through cross-border to eBay, and I sell directly to my dealers overseas.
Okay. On the export side, so this gets into kind of a technical area. The HS codes, as I'm sure you probably already know, they are 10-digit numbers, but 6 digits are agreed to on a global basis. The last 4 digits are based on a country. And so you really need to go and find a good customs agent or somebody in that country to verify if you're going to export, are there going to be duties and taxes, in that country. And I would find a good customs broker that can help you to do that. On the import side, a good question as to whether or not the databases, how up to date those are. I think they're reasonably up to date. Once again, what I would do is a good customs broker, because they'll have that information, because that's what they do in and out, day in, day out. So if there were a significant risk, I would probably say it's worth developing a relationship with a good customs broker just to vet what you believe to be the tariff levels on your product.
How about the de minimis amount, $800? Is that going to
Oh
stay?
yeah, that's a good question. I haven't heard, because that wasn't changed that long ago. I haven't heard that. That doesn't mean that won't happen. There was just for example, Canada, I think the de minimis level into Canada is only like $25. I mean, they're being very conservative because they don't want to lose, for two reasons. One, they want to protect domestic suppliers, and they don't want to lose that revenue. So could the US change? Yeah. Will it? I don't know.
So, well, it's a good thing to know about the HS code. The last 4 digits is the country it comes from, and that could change the status of that particular HS code as far as tariff is concerned.
Yeah, because the 6 digits are agreed to on a global basis. The last 4 are country specific.
I see.
So yeah, you really have to know for that country.
Yes. Well, looking forward to your 2022 export accelerator project.
Good. I'd love to have you.
Yeah.
So the following up kind of that last point that Trong made, Mohammed, I don't know if you want to bring your question in. It relates to that topic. If you want me to ask it. So the question Mohammed had was, how can we register for the upcoming opportunities, Kevin, that you talked about, that will take place in December? So
if you go to our webpage, and I can put that into the chat, the link should be there. And it'll be Exporting 101. And then here's my email as well. And if you have any difficulties, you can always email me, and myself or one of my colleagues will make sure that you get the link.
if you're not able to save the chat or copy that down at this time, feel free to email me or just where you got the sign up for this particular workshop, and I'll make sure that you get that information. So that would be the right way to go. And then let's see if there's any last questions. If not, then I just threw in the chat. That's a link to some of our additional programming that's taking place this week. Buying some time to see if there's one last question to wrap us up. Going once. Going twice. Well, alrighty. Well, I want to say thank you, Kevin, for sharing your experience and knowledge in the imports and exports industry. It's great to have that as a resource in our backyard here in Sacramento. And I know there's a number of people that are across the nation that are tapping into your experience and expertise here as well. So want to remind everyone to plug into the rest of the week here. This is the first session of many throughout Global Entrepreneurship Week. So feel free to follow that link and sign up for a few of our sessions later. There's one starting at 11 o'clock, then 12, and then at 1:30, and then at 4 o'clock. So we got a full day. Hopefully you can plug in. And thank you again, Kevin. We really appreciate you coming in and sharing your experience and expertise, and we'll make sure they get tapped into those resources. And we look forward to helping you tackle global markets. So thank you all for being here, and we look forward to seeing you later on this week or today. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.